Hey there, welcome to Game Dev Game Love. It's a Game Dev London mini podcast series where I talk to other game developers about a game they really love, and we discuss it from a game developer's point of view. I'm Quang, your host from Asobitech, and today our game developer guest is
Jo Haslam. Hi.
Hey Jo, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your game development history.
Sure, yeah. So I've been a game developer for just over 12 years now. I started in 2008 working for a company called Relentless Software. They were mostly known for doing the buzz quiz games. So they were the quiz games you could play with a little buzzer controller. I worked on quite a lot of those because we made quite a lot of those. Stayed there for a few more years, did a Connect game, did some mobile dev with Toys to Life, worked on a Furby game, which was really cool. And then after that, I worked for a company called Mediatonic for a while, and we did a Harry Potter sort of spin-off game in the sort of Fantastic Beasts universe. And after that, I went and joined a company called Snapfinger Click, which is a small indie company based in Brighton, founded by a lot of people who used to work at Relentless. And we make party games, really, or games that you can play with your friends. All of our games work with streaming platforms, so you can play our games on Twitch, Mixer, YouTube, and the viewers can join in and actually play along with the game just by typing stuff in the chat. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years.
Wow, that's such a history. It's great that you've done so much so far. All right. So what's the game you've chosen today to highlight? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the game I wanted to talk about is Just Dance, or the whole kind of series of Just Dance games. It's thinking about the game that I play the most. It has to be that one. I've played it probably more than any other game in my whole life, even thinking back to when I was a kid and playing, Sonic the Hedgehog on a loop because you didn't have any other games. I think even I play this more than I did that, and it's just become such a big part of my life now. I've platinum 2 of the games, which is the only games I've ever platinumed, so I'm really proud of that. But it's I think it's a great game, and there's lots of things about it that I really admire from a development perspective as well as just a player and enjoying it.
So I understand Just Dance first came out in 2009, I want to say.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the first one.
And it's an Ubisoft game.
Yes.
And originally on the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah, the first one came out on the Wii, and it was just a Wii game for the first few years. So it was motion control game, so it worked perfectly for the Wii with their motion controller. But it's now multi-platform because you can play with the different movement peripherals. It works on Xbox with Kinect, or you can play it with the Move on PS4. But there's also a phone app now as well. So you can use that, and it uses the gyro in your phone, so you can play it on virtually any platform. There's even a web-based one called Just Dance Now, which you can just run through your browser and play along with your phone, so sort of everywhere.
That's incredible. For them to take the different control systems, and now obviously most people have a smartphone of some kind, so theoretically everyone can play this now.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've dabbled myself in smartphone controlled games, and it's a great way to get more people in because there's such a barrier to entry when you need a controller. Most people only have 1, maybe 2 at the most. Obviously, if you've got the Switch, you've got 2 built in, which is great, but that still limits you to just 1 or 2 people. Being able to use your phone as a controller means that everyone can join in, basically, however many people you've got. You don't have to pay lots of money for expensive controllers. You've just got the thing you need right in your pocket, so it's good.
Yeah, that's great. Which is your platform of choice for playing Just Dance on?
At the moment, it's PlayStation 4. I moved over to PlayStation 4, I think 2014. That was the first PlayStation 4 one that came out. Before that, I was doing the Wii ones. So I think maybe one before that was on PlayStation 3, but I didn't get that one. I stuck with the Wii until PlayStation 4 because PlayStation 3 was coming to kind of its end of its life cycle. I didn't really play the PlayStation 3 that much, but I play the PlayStation 4 a lot. So since then, I've been playing it on the PlayStation 4.
Okay, and as for someone who's never actually played Just Dance, how would you best describe it to someone like that?
Well, it's very self-explanatory, really, but it's kind of the thing about Just Dance is it is on the surface it's really simple. It is what it says. You just dance. That's the whole point of it. That's how it works. But it's done really well. When you think about all of the different dance games and rhythm action games that are kind of out there, and this one persists. Like, I was reading the other day that Just Dance is Ubisoft's second biggest franchise after Assassin's Creed, which is incredible when you think about it. Also in, I think it was 2011, Just Dance was the second biggest selling game of the year behind Call of Duty. It's like this little... It just ticks along there. It's got its own little thing going on, and it just has this massive broad appeal to people. But how it works, it's a dance game. You watch the dancer on the screen, you copy the moves. It's really easy to kind of get into, but there's lots of layers to it, which is what I quite like about it. I think one of the things that makes it so appealing is that it doesn't put you on the screen. It has a proper professional dancer that you're copying, and they do that really, really well. They kind of anonymize the dancer, so the dancer doesn't have a face, which I think is really important because it means that you can kind of imagine that it's you a lot more easily. And so you're watching this dancer, you're copying the moves, and in your head, hey, I'm just as good as this dancer on screen, but of course you're not, but you don't know that. You can't see yourself, so it's fine. And anyone can just copy moves, even a child can do that. So it's really easy for literally anyone to do. And like, most people enjoy dancing and they don't necessarily have to be good at it, but they like to try and they like to kind of join in with it. So, that's its core thing. But they've done a lot in terms of giving it that longevity, and for the people who are really into it, because I think it has kind of crossed over now into more gamers being interested in it as a game, because I don't think you can have a game that's successful without sort of hardcore gamers enjoying it as well. There's only so much reach you can get to kind of more casual gamers. You still need to own a console, for example, and you're not going to just go out and buy a console for no reason. So you need those hardcore gamers to sort of introduce you to it, if you like, as a more casual gamer. So it's important that they have those other mechanics that are in there as well.
So I spent a lot of time playing the dancing stage and games in the arcade of the dance maps and stuff. I played plenty of dance map games. How do you feel it moves forward from there?
I don't know if it moves forward. I think it kind of moves sideways, or it's a different type of game. Like the dance games, they're quite hardcore, and they're really blending rhythm action with dancing. I wouldn't really call Just Dance a rhythm action game at all, because it's kind of scoring you, but it's not really the point of it. Whereas in Dance, it's the sort of adrenaline you get from it is hitting every single note, and it's really hard to do. You have to be really good at it. And it's a real arcade experience as well. I mean, I know you can get the dance mats and do it at home, but it's not quite the same. It really feels like you're in the arcade, you're showing off. And it's more of a gamer's game, I think. But it's really fun, it's really cool, but there is definitely a sort of... It's harder to get into as a casual person, I think. It can be quite intimidating, especially if the first time you see it is because you're watching someone else in an arcade and they're insanely good and you're not. And you're not in the privacy of your own living room, where you can be a bit rubbish and get better at it. I think Just Dance is more for like a broader audience. It's supposed to be literally for everyone. Like, an interesting thing about Just Dance is it's played a lot in hospitals, I believe. This came out, this was a talking point earlier in the year, because was it last year when they announced that Just Dance 2020 was going to be on the Wii, and everyone was like, what? Why on earth is the Wii still getting a release? It's a completely discontinued platform. But there was a Twitter thread doing the rounds that was talking about how it's used a lot in hospitals and in rehabilitation, because actually you think about it as being a dance game, but you only need to hold the controller in one hand. So you don't need to move your whole body. You don't need to get your feet, for example, into complex places. And even me, who's played a lot of the games and really enjoys it, whenever I start doing a new one and I'm not very familiar with the dances, there's always a sort of learning curve where I don't really move my feet at first. I learn the arm moves first. And then once I've got that down, then I start working on the feet and stuff like that. And because you only have to really worry about the one hand you've got it in, you don't feel like you're you're not playing it properly. It's sort of, it scores you based on how you move that one hand. The rest of your body is like, doesn't care what's going on. And I think that gives you the choice, if you like, where it's, am I going to try and do as well as I can and copy it perfectly, or am I just going to do enough that I need to do? But that doesn't stop you just sitting on the sofa. Even if you can't get up and move that much, you can still play and you can still move your upper body and join in. So I think it's just a different beast, really. It's very much about sort of bringing people together, being very, very inclusive, and the way it's built in, the sort of, you know, the more strategy elements to it, it's a lot less obvious. It's more something that you would only notice if you play it a lot.
So we talk about the movement with having it in one hand. How precise can that be? I know obviously the Wii Mote came out, then the Wii Mote Plus came out with a bit more few gyros in it, and now you have sensors and you have the cameras and stuff, and that all helps. Does the precision, does it carry through?
Yeah, well, it was quite notorious with the first game, actually, because the picking up your movements wasn't done very well, and that was one of the things the reviewers pointed out, was that it just didn't seem to score you very well. And I can actually remember back at Relentless, we got the game in when it first came out, because we were researching lots of different party games for various things we were doing at the time, and that was the first time I played it, actually, was in the office, and lots of the people that played it were like, oh, it's awful, it's terrible, it doesn't score you correctly at all. And I just didn't care. I just thought, I think it's fantastic. Like, yeah, the scoring's not very good, but that's not why I'd want to play it. Like, the dance moves are really fun. The theming of each dance is done really well. And the scoring is just not that important. They have improved it over the years, and it seems pretty decent now, but there's always going to be sort of flakiness with motion controls. If you've ever worked with motion controls, you know that it's never going to be perfect. It never is. But what they do in Just Dance that I find interesting is they are quite forgiving, but they have this scoring system that makes you feel like you're doing well even if you're not. So you've basically got 5 levels. So you've got completely missed the note, which is like you have to really just do nothing for it to count it as missed. Then you've got okay, which is the sort of lowest detecting you moving. Then you've got good as the second one, then super, and then perfect. And it's like, okay is really like bad, but it's called okay. So it makes you think, oh, doing okay. Good is really average, but it's called good. So even if you don't know that super and perfect exist, you think you're doing really well. And I think that's what helps in terms of the scoring really doesn't matter that much, but when you see this encouraging words on the screen, you feel like you're doing a good job. And if the controls go a bit wrong, it's probably only really going to frustrate the people who are kind of trophy chasing and like the real hardcore ones. I've always sort of seen it, because I do chase the trophies. I'm still trying to platinum 2018. I'm a little bit behind at the moment, but it can get frustrating when you're on a song and there's like one note and you try all these different things to get it to register, and sometimes I find I have to move my hand in a very sort of different way, but that worked, that gave me a perfect that time, so I'll do it again. And it's only really, it sort of almost becomes part of the challenge when you're that into it, if you know what I mean. It reminds me of how when people complain about the blue shell in Mario Kart, they're like, oh, it's not fair, it's too harsh. But it's like, if you're really good at the game, then you should expect that blue shell to come along, and you've got to find a way to get around it. So it's the same sort of thing for me with Just Dance. It's like, I know the controls aren't always going to be perfect, but that to me is part of the experience. I've got to find a way to get around it and find a way to beat the game, and that just, for me, has become part of the challenge, really.
Yeah, that's great. So it means people can just enjoy it for what it is, and if people want to, I say, get those high scores, they can go for those high scores as well. Would you still then say it's a game in that respect, or is it more an experience? Or I don't know, what would you call it?
Yeah, I think it's subjective, actually. Yeah, I mean, games like that, you've got games like Just Dance, SingStar, lots of party games, a lot of the games we do at Snap Finger Click as well. You could argue that they're not gamey games, and there are certainly games I've worked on which they're not really about the game. They are about the experience, and especially social gaming. It's not sort of important who wins. It is about just bringing people together and having some fun. But it's something that you expect in a game. It's almost like the reason why you're doing it. There has to be a goal. There has to be a point to it. But that doesn't have to be the main thing, and it can just be the thing that kind of threads it together. It's just something that gets you from A to B. But in terms of how important it is, often it isn't. But it's so subjective. Going back to what I said before about when we played the first one in my office, for a lot of people, the fact that the scoring system, the fact that the controls weren't picking it up and giving them low scores was a huge problem for them. It was a real deal breaker. It wasn't for me. But, it all comes down to personal choice. And I think... some people won't even notice or care that they're getting scored, whereas others will take it very seriously. But that's okay, and that's what's good about it, is that it caters for both types of people.
I have to say, I'm actually a huge SingStar fan. I'm a terrible singer, but I really enjoy playing SingStar.
Yeah.
And we play it generally on easy, so you get a scoring of some kind, but you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to sing great.
Yeah.
And we do get quite competitive as well on it. But it's just a big, great party game. We get around, I have all the discs, and we go through them, and we pick the songs, and we sing the songs, and it doesn't matter too much if you're winning or losing. You're just enjoying it, and that's a big part of, I think, gaming has now progressed to a point where experiences of all kinds now come together, and it's wonderful to have that. What was your... did you have much experience in other rhythm games or music games, as it were?
Nothing that really sticks out to me. I wouldn't say I was a big rhythm game fan. I loved SingStar. I played SingStar a lot as well. I played Britney's Dance Beat a lot. I was pretty good at that. I'm not sure if that counts, but the thing about music is that everyone loves music in some form, don't they? I played a lot of Guitar Hero and Rock Band as well, but I wouldn't say I was a huge fan of it. It was that time, in the early to mid noughties, you had all these kind of games coming out, and Buzz was part of it too as well, but it was these kind of peripheral based games, and they were just this huge novelty to a lot of people. The fact that you could hold a real guitar, play a real drum kit, hold a microphone, those things were really exciting. Going back to SingStar a bit, I think that to me was such a huge game changer when that came out. I think that was one of the first times that I saw a game and saw it as just this different thing. It wasn't a game. It was something different, and it just felt absolutely genius to me that it had been turned into a game, that you could basically have karaoke in your living room and also have a game out of it as well. I thought, it was just such an amazing thing, and it stuck around for such a long time. It was only the beginning of this year that they turned off the SingStar servers, and I think the first one came out in 2003. So that was incredible. But gaming as an experience, I think, is becoming bigger across everywhere. You look at Twitch. So many people log onto Twitch just to watch people play games. They're not playing them themselves. They're there to just chat with their friends, hang out. It's become a hub of, we're all interested in this game. We like this game, but we're here to just chat and hang out. And it's no one's, the viewers that are watching, they're not trying to beat the game or score high scores. They're just there to enjoy themselves. And I think it's just the way that entertainment is kind of blending into each other. Games like Just Dance have been a huge part of that kind of push to get games to be a more social experience, to be something that's not about gaming. And it's the same as, logging on to play, I don't know, even just play GTA with your mates over voice chat. It's not really about trying to complete the missions. It's the fact that you can chat with your mates and play a game together and do that, over the internet. You don't have to be in the same room. There's different ways that you can kind of socialize. So all gaming is getting elements of that now. It's different levels in different games, and it's not necessarily the main thing in more traditional games, but you see it as something that people value, and it's important.
Yeah, I think my first experience of Just Dance was we did an event at Gamescom, and we were showcasing there, and literally opposite us was a booth showing Just Dance, and just watching people come along and dance and enjoy it, and then watching the crowd dance along with the people, it was just this joyful experience. And I think that's what, for me as a designer, I want to convey in games. It's just joy, whether it be score chasing or movement or socializing. The main factor I want is joy and happiness from people, and I think Just Dance does that really, really well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you can just be walking past and join in. Like that's the thing about it. I remember actually going to a house party some years ago. We took Just Dance there, and almost everyone was playing apart from one person who just absolutely refused. But it didn't take long, maybe 3 or 4 dances, and then like the whole living room was dancing. And that was back in the Wii days, so we only had the 4 Wiimotes, but I think there was about 10 of us. So the whole room was just dancing along, even without the controllers, just because they wanted to join in. It just speaks to people on that level. It's just so easy to get hooked into it. That's what's nice about it. But they do that so well. I mean, they do that through the theming and through the dancers themselves. Their team, they have, people you wouldn't expect to find on a dev team normally. They have choreographers to make up the dance routines, like proper professional dancers. They have a costume person as well, who designs all the costumes, does all the wardrobe and stuff like that. And those are the things that makes it stand out. You can't sort of skimp on that. That has to be absolutely perfect every time. That's the most important thing about it. Everything else is just kind of, the scoring, the little mini games on the side. That stuff's all nice, but the core of it is the dances and the themings of those dances, and the music, of course, and that's what gets people in. And it's difficult to find someone who doesn't enjoy that. It's like everybody likes music, everybody likes dancing. Well, not everybody, but I think most people like dancing. It's just it's a very basic thing. It's something that's hardwired into us. It's something that's humans have done for hundreds of years. So it's hard to sort of ignore it when you see it,
So, like, they talk about when we talk about game design, they never say. I'm a firm believer in saying there's no bad ideas. It all comes in the execution of that idea.
Yeah.
And this comes down to the presentation, as you say, and people say, your core game mechanic should be quite small, but your presentation is what you spend the time on making, you polishing that. And this is, for me, becoming more and more obvious. The more games I see, the more games I work on. Do you feel like the level of polish they put into Just Dance is just overrides any issues the game itself may have?
Yeah, I think like what you say, building on a simple idea like that. I'm a firm believer that you can kind of turn almost anything into a game if you go at it the right way, and particularly games in this genre that are designed to sort of capture everybody and like casual gamers and sort of a broad audience. It needs to be a simple idea, but I think the best games come from the simplest things. Like I mentioned Mario Kart earlier. It's like, on the surface, it is actually quite a simple game. If you're an outsider and you don't know it very well, you think, oh, well, all I've got to do is drive the car forward and try and be the fastest, right? But if you've played it, there's a lot more to it than that. But that stuff comes gradually. If all you understand is that you just need to drive the car forward, you can still play. You don't need to worry about the other stuff. But the other stuff's important, because if you don't have it, it's too superficial. It just doesn't resonate with you enough. You get the hang of it, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, there's nowhere for me to go now. I'm bored with it. It needs to have somewhere to go. So I do think that stuff is really important in Just Dance, but I think what they do in a clever way is that they don't overwhelm you with it. It's just nicely layered into the game so that, if you don't notice it, it doesn't really matter. And gradually you'll discover more things. That they also kind of hold things back as well. They keep things locked until you've done a few things, and then they slowly introduce new things to you. I mean, the reality is that for most people, it's just about, just doing the kind of pick a song, play with your friends. But and then this was how we used to approach games at Relentless with Buzz as well. We used to think about how there was a small part of our audience on Buzz, you used to have you could have 2 sets of buzzers. You could have, because they came as a pack of 4, and we used to make game modes specifically for people who had 2 sets, so that you could play 8-player. But I think when we got the numbers back on how many people were playing with 8, it was tiny. But that for those people who were playing it, we knew how important it was to have those features in the game, because they are like your number one fans. They are the most hardcore fanatics. They are the ones who will tell every friend about it, and they're the ones who will be screaming on the internet if they don't like the game. So you have to give them something. You have to keep them happy, because they're the ones who are, are always going to stick around and are always going to be there to support your franchise. So it's really important that you don't, you take them seriously. You don't mistreat them. You give them something to do, but you do it in a way that doesn't put off or sort of preclude more casual people. When I think about like the people I'm designing games for, because we talk about like casual and hardcore gamers a lot, and in my head, I don't really think you are a casual or a hardcore gamer. Generally, you are one towards a certain game, and everybody starts off as a casual gamer for that one game until they get used to it, or they don't. They either play it a bit and they don't really play it that much and they stay casual with it, or they get hardcore with that game. And that's what you want people to do. You want them to drift from being casual user, like, oh, I played it a few times, oh, actually I really like it, oh, I'm going to play it more. Now I find myself playing it on my own all the time. And you're trying to get as many people into that group. And to do that, it's not easy, because you need to start them off with the right balance of, it's not hard for me to pick it up, but I'm just introducing the elements just at the right pace, just when I'm ready, so that I can start making that transition into, okay, now I want to unlock everything in this game. I want to get every trophy. I want to achieve all the high scores of everything. Ideally, that's where you want to get as many people, and they will buy the sequel, so they're really important to you.
I have to say, when I had Buzz, I had 8 controllers as well. So I was, I guess, one of the hardcore fans. I get my friends over, I say, we're playing Buzz. And Buzz and SingStar, I was big into those party games. Played a lot of Rock Band as well. So that's definitely, what you're saying definitely resonates there. If you were working on the Just Dance series, what would you do what would you do with it?
I think I would definitely want to do something with Twitch, because, and I know there's a lot of issues with rights, so I'm sure they've probably thought about this before, but, let's dream.
If that wasn't an issue, yeah.
Yeah, if that wasn't an issue, because I think, you see a lot of people already play Just Dance on Twitch, and I've noticed how people, because I've looked into it before to see what people do with it, and it's sort of like a lot of people, for example, choose to play on the PlayStation 4 because it only has a camera. You can play with just the PlayStation camera and you don't need to be holding anything or whatever. So a lot of streamers choose to do that because they don't have things in their hands sort of getting in the way, even if the scoring isn't that great, because that's not what they're focusing on. But I think there's a lot you could do with it. If you I don't know if you played Twitch Sings, that came out a couple of years ago now. I've not seen that. So Twitch Sings is by Harmonix, I believe. It's a karaoke game you can play on Twitch, and the broadcaster sings much like SingStar, but the viewers can join in and do things. They can kind of give praise, applause. They can set little challenges while they're singing, and they vote for the next songs and things like that. And you could see how a lot of that could easily translate into a game like Just Dance as well. The very first Just Dance came out with these little challenge modes. I guess they dropped them because it didn't work so well in the living room environment, but it was stuff like you'd be dancing and then it might suddenly go right freeze or spin around, or just make you do something random. And that's a bit like what Twitch Sings does. And I can imagine if you were streaming Just Dance and your viewers were sort of building up and voting and then sending you a little challenge that you had to do in the middle of it, trying to throw you off. There's lots that you could do with that, and it is such a social experience, and I really believe social games that work well in the living room will translate well into platforms like Twitch as well. So that would definitely be, for me, like the obvious kind of next step to bring it, to what we do now as gamers. What's the big thing? And games need to start incorporating streaming platforms more generally, I think, because it's here to stay, you know, it's not going anywhere. So we should embrace it and work with it and sort of see if there's any advantages that we can take from it.
And what would you say is probably the most favourite thing about Just Dance for you?
I think it's just the dances. I think they're just so well done, you know, they're really fun and they're really well balanced as well. I mean, I remember years ago when I was a little bit more into it than I am now. I mean, I'm a mum now, so I don't have as much time to to play it as I used to. But there was a point a few years ago where I was obsessed with it. Like one of them came out, and I was up until 3 a.m. every night playing it because I just couldn't get enough of it. I was just enjoying it so much. For me, it was such an adrenaline rush to get the dance moves down and feel like I was doing it perfectly. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't, but in my head, I felt like I was. And I started to get interested in learning like other classic dances. So I tried to learn Thriller for a bit, you know, to do like the Thrill the World dance session. And like doing a real dance versus one of the dances in Just Dance is like such an eye opener, because real choreographies that have been made for songs, you know, like Beyonce's Single Ladies dance as well is like another kind of iconic one. But when you break it down, there's not a lot of sections that are that repeatable. It's almost like the whole song is made up of little sequences that are all completely different, and you've got to remember all of that. It's really hard. I mean, Beyonce's wearing heels as well. I don't know how she does it, but it's like in Just Dance, you really believe that you're dancing like a professional dancer, but it's the way that they've created the dances. It's like a little trick, because the dances are actually quite simple, but they don't feel like it. But because they repeat the moves enough, because I remember someone asking me about Just Dance a while back, because they were interested in playing it, but they were worried about the learning curve, because there's no like training mode or anything like that. You just go straight in, but it doesn't really need one, because the dances are enough that it probably repeats the same sequences sort of 3 or 4 times throughout. So you might not have it the first couple of times, but by the end of the song you feel like you're kind of getting it, and then you play it again and you're like, oh, I've got it now, I know what I'm doing. And I think that's what it does so well, is that it really makes you believe you're doing some really complicated dance, and it makes you feel like you've just got the hang of it really quickly. So you feel amazing. You feel like you are Beyonce, you know, but you're not, of course. But it doesn't matter, because that's how it makes you feel. And I think that's really the key to its success is in that it gives you that rush. But it still leaves a lot of room to grow because of its scoring system. It's still hard to get every single move absolutely spot on. So you've got a lot of room to kind of, you know, to still learn and be the best at it, and you know, get all those trophies basically.
So we talked about the multiplayer aspect of the game, and obviously with the Wii, when it first came out, you had up to 4 Wiimotes connected, and now they've added new controllers, so you can use your mobile phone as well. Do you know how many players for the latest version?
I believe it's 6. You can have up to 6
players.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just for the scoring, and as you say, people will just join in anyway.
Yeah, I think it's the UI is the limitation. We come up a lot against this at Snapfinger Click as well. You tend to tap out at sort of 6 to 8 players if you're trying to show the UI on the screen, and that it just comes down to real estate. Also, with a game like Just Dance, I think they probably consider the living room sizes and the fact that, you know, how common is it going to be that you're going to have more than that number. So given all the challenges to go higher than that number, I think that's probably why they choose not to do it. Even though technically you could do more, it's just that you wouldn't be able to display their score and things like that. But it's interesting because I don't think score matters that much, and I think for a game like Just Dance, it sort of makes sense probably in terms of realities of living room sizes. But when it comes to other sort of social games, I think you can. I'm interested in doing games, especially with Twitch now, where you can have a lot more people joining in, and you just don't worry about displaying their score. You know, if you think about MMOs and things like that, you don't need to see everybody's score all the time. You know, you just need to see the top scores. If you're using your phone, you can display the score on your phone if you want to know how you're personally doing. So there's lots of ways around it. I just don't think that people have really tapped into it that much. Phone as a controller especially is still quite a new thing, and it's it's still there are difficulties in it. It hasn't quite been cracked for everybody. Not everybody's convinced in it as a sort of alternative method to controlling games, but there's some really interesting stuff that's going on, and I think that we will see some more interesting stuff over the next few years. Phones aren't going anywhere, and mobile gaming, of course, is its own sort of thing, but the things you can do with mobiles are getting more and more sophisticated. So I do think that we're going to be seeing a lot more interesting stuff with phones, and potentially being able to get a lot more people into a game that way over the next few years.
For sure. Obviously, with things like Jackbox, obviously, and all the games you're making now,
Yeah.
I know you're incorporating phone, a lot of quiz games and stuff. The guys, so it's Steve McNeil. He does Wi-Fi Wars, and he does in a live experience where you turn up at an event. You log in on your phones, and it does a show, and you can play games on your phone and interact with the audience at the same time. As you say, the market for a control device that everyone has on them is just the beginning of that. It's just the beginning of that, and I can't wait to see where we can take that. What do you think is the best use of a phone as a controller so far that you've seen?
Oh, that's a good question. It's probably the Jackbox games, I think, because they, to me, feel like the ones who really popularised it and have done very well with it so far. I think the first one I can really remember playing and thinking this is really good was Fibbage. I think that came out around maybe 2014, 2015 perhaps. But using the phone as a secret screen was it is such a cool thing to do. I mean, we took a lot of inspiration from its quiz time from that idea, and at Relentless we talked a lot about secret screens, and this was sort of before smartphones, so we were often thinking about is there some sort of peripheral, some device that we can sort of create that could let us do that, because we knew there was this value in secret information, because you get it in a lot of card games and board games and parlour games. We did a game at Snap Finger Click called Act It Out, which has secret information in it, which is to communicate the secret phrase that you're going to act. But we just asked our players to look away. That was our way of communicating it, because it's the most simple thing to do. But with a game like Fibbage, being able to type in your fake answer, only you know what you've typed, that really felt like it was opening a whole new sort of window of opportunity for games to work with a really interesting mechanic that you just didn't see much in video games before. And they're doing great things with it, but I still think there's a lot more that can be done. We're thinking about a lot of things at Snap Finger Click, all the things that you can do with a phone. There feels like there's so much sort of untapped potential there, and I feel like we're only just getting started with it now. There's a service called Air Console as well. I don't know if you've heard of, but all of their games work with a phone. And it's a pretty incredible service, actually, because it's all done through the web. You just open it in your web browser. You don't need a console. You can just kind of crack on with it, and it reminds me of sort of like the casual version of Stadia. It's like it's not made for hardcore gamers. It's so easy for anybody to just do it, to just at home play along with the family, with your friends. I think it's really powerful that to not need any sort of specialist equipment, and ultimately that's where we're going to go, isn't it? One day we won't have game consoles anymore, we won't have discs, so everything will be streaming online somehow. It's just how do we get there? Are we still going to have controllers, or are we going to get to the point where phones will be sophisticated enough that they can be our controllers completely? I think that will take a long time, because people aren't going to be prepared to let go of the things that they're used to in gaming, and there's still too many technological challenges at the moment. But it feels like 10, 15 years we're going to be at a point where you can just use your phone, and you can just run something through your computer or your television, and you won't need anything else, and that'll be incredible.
Yeah, I think there's still a love for tactile buttons.
Yeah.
So I don't know when there'll be a transition where those either no longer matter or they are incorporated into phones themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows where phones may go? You know, we may end up with more sort of hybrid looking phones with buttons on them or attachments, or it's really hard to say. I mean, I think buttons are an important part of gaming. I think it's hard to, you know, we had this with this quiz time when we were designing the sort of layout of the answering. We had to make it so that the answers were always in the same places, because you want to be looking up at the screen. You don't want to waste any time going like this. You want to be able to know where you're putting your fingers. So without a button, it's actually quite difficult for people. It's you know, you can get it, but it's still not great. It's not very accessible. You know, if you've got visual impairments, you can't feel where the buttons are and things like that. I do think buttons are important to gaming, but it's hard to say. You know, phones, why are they still called phones? You know, they're our own little personal computers in a way that we keep on ourselves. So it just depends what becomes more important. You know, phones now have really good selfie cams, for example, because that's become important. So perhaps one day phones will start to more resemble game controllers. I mean, I don't know, but I think that for me, the logical direction of gaming in general will get to the point where, as it has with movies and music, is that we just gradually phase out having special devices, having, you know, discs and tapes and things, and move towards just a kind of service that you can access. And I feel like games will get there eventually. It's just going to take a lot longer, but it feels like it's the natural direction that it will head in. And yeah, it'll be games that are gradually introducing the notion that you can use your phone that will set the seeds in motion of what happens next. So those games are really important. They need to sort of lead the way and, you know, showing that, hey, phones can be used as a controller. What do we do with phones next, and what do we want on them?
It sounds like an exciting time for us, and like to be a developer at this moment in time. It's like I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and back then the 8-bit era, then 16-bit era, and 32-bit era, it felt like there was new things coming in all the time. And then we had a bit of a stagnation. I felt like in gaming and in gaming tech, but now with mobile devices, there's this new resurgence, which is quite exciting. Actually, I want to go back to talk about second screens. I know the Wii U had a screen in its controller, and I'm sure Nintendo made mistakes with marketing and things like that and other things, but I was quite excited about the second screen, and I feel like maybe it was underutilized in some games, or didn't understand it yet.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point. When you looked at some of Nintendo's first party games, there were some really amazing little mechanics that were going on with that second screen. You know, you had I think it was Wii U. Is it Wii U Party? I think it was the board game one. There were some really awesome mechanics. You know, there was things where you had to hold the pad up and so you couldn't see it, and like try and do things where you weren't looking. There's some really fun ideas with that, and I remember being a little bit gutted that the Wii U didn't do as well. You know, I know there was some marketing issues, but you didn't really see much utilization of that second screen outside of Nintendo's first party games. I mean, there was a few, but not many. And I think there's the sort of multiple reasons for that. I think one, as you say, is that people just didn't get it. You know, it's a new thing to get your head around. It takes a long time sometimes for those things to click into place, especially for developers who weren't there from the ground up knowing about this hardware. They're just suddenly seeing it for the first time and thinking, oh, what can we do with that? It takes time. But, you know, there's things like multi-platform releases. You know, if you making a game specifically for a console that wasn't selling that well, it's hard to justify that. It reminds me a bit of when the Xbox One was going to come with the Kinect built in, and then that decision kind of got reversed. I worked on a Kinect game, and the interesting thing about Kinect is that it's very hard to make a game that's like fully Kinect. You know, you're really limited in what you can do, because you're sort of, you end up with dance games and sports games and just, you know, rhythm movement games. But I always thought the Kinect was a really interesting device in terms of like using it in the right moments. You know, just being able to do hand gestures, you know, kind of like Star Trek style, you know, wave things away, Iron Man, you know, do things like that. The voice recognition as well was also like a pretty good feature. You could just, you know, when the when it made sense, you could just use your voice. But of course, a game was never going to be released with like a little bit of Connect in it, because then you're narrowing your audience. You're saying, oh, only Connect owners can actually play this game. So we'll just not bother with any of that and just do it another way. So when an Xbox One announced, oh, Connect is a requirement, I thought that's interesting, actually. I think we'll see some really interesting games coming out that just use, a little bit of the Connect. Like when the Wii, like when New Super Mario Brothers came out, and it was mostly just traditional, but there was a little bit of shaking and, just when it made sense. And I thought, that's really cool that you can do that. So I was quite excited about that. And I thought it was a real shame, actually, that, that whole decision just sort of got reversed. And I think there's probably a few games in development that got changed last minute because of that, and we never got to see them, which is a little bit sad in a way. But it's always a challenge with a new device like that, and a lot of it will come down to a business decision, really, and innovation sort of goes out the window. Some of the best games I've played need crazy setups. What's that game? Johann Sebastian Joust. Have you played that one?
Yeah.
With the moves. And if you want to play it really well, you need 7 moves. Who owns 7 moves? It's like, it's such a cool game, but it's sort of like, there is a point where there is a business kind of boundary where you can't expect your customer to sort of take that leap. The audience would just be too small, unfortunately, even though it's cool and exciting. It's just not going to happen from a business point of view, so it just doesn't happen.
I guess that's actually a good case for the indie scene. The indie scene has less risk, and they're less risk adverse in that the money they put into they can do those passion projects. They can do those weird out there things. Like I've obviously I'm in the indie space, and I know many indie friends, and they're making some crazy stuff, hardware stuff, just stuff that you can never, like stuff that Ubisoft and Nintendo and other companies would never get away with. What would you say is some of the most interesting things you've seen in the indie space? Your game for sure. And Johann Sebastian Joust as well. There was a game I saw a few years ago by, I'm not sure of their name. It was the Copenhagen Games Collective, I think they might be called. But it was basically a group of people that kind of make games together in Denmark. And they had a game that was super fun. It was called Button, which was an acronym. I'll probably get this wrong, but let me think. It was Brutally Unfair Tactics Totally Okay Now, I think it stood for. And it was brilliant. It was so fun. It was played with Xbox controllers, 4 Xbox controllers. And you had to lay them down on a table. Everybody had their own controller. And then it would come up with instructions like, everyone take 10 steps back. And then it would say something like, the winner will be the second button pressed, for example. So you would run towards the controllers, try and press someone else's, and then make sure yours was second. So everyone's all fighting and stuff. And then they had different rounds where it was stuff like, right, this is the slow motion round. You have to walk in slow motion. This is the walking backwards round. This is the acting like a monkey while you're walking round, And I went to see a talk that was done by the people that made it, and they actually made this big point about how the game doesn't check that you're walking slowly or you're pretending to be a monkey. It just tells you to. And because you're in a room with other people and you're playing a game, you will just do it because it's fun, right? And if you don't, your friends will be like, hey, why aren't you playing the game? You're cheating, And that's a philosophy that kind of stayed with me, actually, because, we did that with Act It Out, Snap Finger Click. Why should I look away from the screen when it's telling me this thing? Well, why not? Why are you playing the game if you don't want to? The magical thing about social gaming is that you've got other people there to sort of police the action. Traditional games make a huge effort to stop cheating, because people will find a way to get to the top of the leaderboard, to get all those trophies. So you spend so much time building all these extra conditions in to try and stop them cheating. In social games, you really don't have to bother. If someone's going to cheat, you've got someone in the room who'll tell you off, and that's all you need. So I think that's also quite freeing. And as an indie dev, and you just think, let's just try this thing, it's a bit unorthodox, but why not? And it's fun.
So yeah, that was definitely, that button game was definitely up there as one of the coolest things I've seen, because it was just so refreshing. There was no worrying about, will people play this? Will they listen? It was just mad, silly fun, and that's what games should be to me. So it was great.
That's a great example. I've watched videos of that, and it looks hilarious, fun. But it's great. It brings it back to Just Dance, and as you were saying, it's not necessarily about the scoring. It's about the social aspect of it. Everybody pleases themselves, and it's about having fun of it. Well, thanks so much for coming along and chatting to us about Just Dance. It's definitely been a very enjoyable talk, and as I said, joy is what it's all about. Is there anything that you're working on, or anything you'd like to tell our audience about?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we're working on stuff at SnapFingerClick. There's nothing I can be specific about at the moment, but we're always working on new social games, and hopefully we can make some more announcements later this year. But we are hard at work, and there'll be some more stuff coming out from us hopefully very soon. Still with Twitch, and still for people to play together, which is what we do. So I'm really excited about that. Keep an eye out.
Great. And if people want to know more about you and what you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, so probably best place is our Discord, which is discord.gg/snapfingerclick. We also have all our social media profiles as well. We have a website, but our Discord is probably the place to go to sort of hang out with us and chat with us. And we also stream twice a week, every Wednesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. UK time, and that's at twitch.tv/snapfingerclick. Twitch.tv/snapfingerclick. That's where you can find us every Wednesday and Thursday as well.
Great. Thanks everyone for listening. If you're listening on YouTube, a subscribe really, really help. If you're listening on any other podcast platforms, follow us on those as well. That's great. Again, thank you to Jo. Thank you everyone for listening. This has been Game Dev, Game Love, a mini podcast series for Game Dev London, and you stay awesome.